As a youngling, my broodmother had often told me and my siblings stories of the Forsaken, a race of heretics and deviants whom even the gods had abandoned, demons one and all. I once thought that they were just a myth, a story to frighten the younglings, and a simple explanation for unexplained evils in the galaxy, an example of that which we must never become. After all, how vile must a species be for the gods themselves to abandon them? My broodmother told us many stories of despondent rogues limping their way from one port to the next, subsiding only on their tricks and depraved nature. It wasn't until much later that I learned the truth of the matter. As the largest of my brood, it was only proper that I enlist in the Empire's armed forces as a legionnaire of the 212 I served in campaigns throughout and beyond our galactic arm. For 20 years I fought against any and all foes of the Empire, from the hive minds of the Andari conglomerate to peasant uprisings in the Trickar cluster. But it wasn't until the Frexian campaign that I came across one of them. The Frexians had landed on one of our newly acquired industrial worlds in the fringes of the Empire, in the vain hopes of reclaiming it. Orbital bombardment would have obliterated any value that the planet held, and so the 212 was deployed to drive the invaders from our world. The ground fighting had initially gone in our favour. We pushed back the Frexians each day, but it wasn't long until the fighting devolved into a grueling guerrilla war. Even so, we managed to maintain the upper hand against the invaders for another 4 months. That was when the rumours began. My fellow soldiers began telling stories from across the planet. I heard of assassins in the night, leaving no sign of their existence, save the corpses found in their wake. I heard of demons traversing the battlefield as if they were taking a stroll through their homeland, cleaving their way for our forces. It didn't take long for us to get word from the intelligence that the Frexians had begun employing alien mercenaries. It wasn't until several months later that I put the rumours and the intel together. In the stories I've been told as a youngling, the Forsaken were always weak and pathetic existences. Unable to sustain themselves, they chose to prey upon the weak, choosing to flee whenever a proper foe presented itself. They were not the kind of being found in an actual war zone. It was a routine patrol for the urban ruin that was once an industrial district. All was quiet as we walked past the factories and shipping facilities that once bustled with activity. The area had become familiar to me over the course of the campaign. While the fighting was still going strong across much of the planet, the district I was assigned to became remarkably uneventful shortly after the guerrilla fighting began, seeming that the insurgents had been wholly driven out. It appeared to be yet another uneventful patrol, and then the world exploded. Ugh! I barely managed to croak out. I'm lying on the ground, can't remember how I got here, and the air is so thick with dust I can scarcely make out objects a few feet away from me. There's debris everywhere, and all I can hear is a faint ringing in my ears. I try to get up, but can't feel my legs responding. I look down to see the hideous remains of my lower body. One digitigrade leg was entirely gone below the first joint. The second was bent in all the wrong places, with sections where the scales were torn away, exposing the muscle and bone beneath. But even more concerning was my exposed digestive tract, draped across my abdomen and on the ground, and the ever-expanding pool of blue blood I found myself lying in. I should have been in pain, but everything just felt numb. And then it didn't. I tried to scream, but ended up choking on my own blood and bile. The agony was league beyond anything I had felt or imagined was possible. I'm going to die here. My mind is a haze of pain and adrenaline. I search my surroundings for something, anything to get out of this, and I see it. A silhouette striding through the dust cloud nearby. I couldn't make out any fine details, but I could tell that it was a biped with 2 arms and a head atop its torso. Due to the distinct contrast to the Frexian's 6-legged form, I knew it was a fellow Binor. Unable to speak, I managed with no small amount of effort to raise my 3-fingered hand and get their attention. To my relief, the figure starts walking directly towards me, and as it gets closer I can gradually make out the finer details. It was no Binor. It stood upright, but the way its legs moved was wrong. Its arms were much longer and thicker than they should be, but most alarmingly this creature was massive. At least twice as wide as a head and shoulders taller than any Binor I had ever seen. It stopped only a few feet away from me, where I can see every detail of his form. The creature is an imperious titan of bone and muscle, clad in imposing armour as black as night, dirtied by the tan dust of this arid hellscape and the mottled green remains of my kin, with only his head exposed. His tan skin had patches of dark brown fur on top of his head, trailing down the sides of his face and around his mouth. But of all its alien features, I had never seen anything like his eyes. Circular green oceans surrounding a black center as dark as the void, threatening to swallow all existence as though they had a gravitational pull of their own. No matter how much I try, I'm unable to break my gaze. Without uttering a sound, I was able to see every emotion this creature was feeling. I saw fatigue, sadness, pity, and apprehension. But eclipsing all of that was a rage that threatened to burn away my soul with nothing more than a glare. None of the stories had ever gotten the descriptions quite right, but there was no mistaking what kind of being stood before me. In a time when the Binary Imperium had only just broken the shackles of its cradle world, it sought to fulfill its duty to spread the will of the gods to its primitive neighbors. Some had resisted the Empire's enlightenment, but before long they all came to bask in the light of the gods. This cycle continued for centuries, until we met them. These creatures originated on an abnormally large blue and green terrestrial planet known as Earth. They rejected the wisdom of the gods in favor of their primitive tribal beliefs. They were not the first to choose the path of the heretic, and if they would not embrace the gods' love, they would learn of the gods' wrath just as the others. The Holy Fleet descended on Earth as divine punishment. Cities were rent asunder, forests burned to ash, and the heretics were slaughtered by the millions. Every species before them had bowed down, once faced with the might of the gods. However, these creatures resisted with a ferocity and determination never seen prior or since. After many months of the conversion, it was made clear to the Holy Science that these primitives were incapable of embracing the divine, and thus would never submit in fear of the true gods, and so their homeworld was cracked open and its core destroyed, erasing the heretics on its surface. However, not all inhabitants of this cursed planet were destroyed. Some of the creatures managed to either steal Imperial vessels or produce crude mockery of their divine beauty, escaping the cleansing of their homeworld. The remnants of this species now lurk in the darkest parts of the galaxy. With their bipedal form and no natural weapons or defenses, they survive only through their cunning and depravity. They await in the dark for the lost enlightened to fall into their traps, scavengers and parasites in the void. In order to prevent the spread of their corruption, the name of these creatures has been struck from the record, and they shall forever be known as the Forsaken, those whom not even the gods would embrace. As I laid across from the imposing figure, my broodmother's words played across my mind. I was always told that these creatures' lack of faith made them weak, but now, unable to break his menacing gaze, I know that they are not forsaken because they do not fear the gods, but because the gods fear them. The creature leveled his weapon towards me, and the world exploded for a second time.